Hey everyone, Stacks here. Welcome to the channel, and if this is your first time stopping by or you've been here a few times and you're enjoying the content, make sure you hit that subscribe button and continue to help this channel grow. I appreciate it, guys. And with that, let's get to Powers of X number 4. Now I'm going to go ahead and warn you that you're going to use a different part of your brain that you used last week. Last week was very emotional. You had the Nightcrawler and Wolverine scene, the Cyclops and Jean, and all those X-Men that we know and love that went on a absolute suicide mission, and none of them made it. And so while Jonathan Hickman made you feel last week, this week he's going to make you think. And as far as the artists and the colors, you got the team of Silva and Marte Garcia again that have been absolutely killing it. And since the videos seem to go smoother when I do it this way, I'm going to try to save all the white pages to the end. And I'm going to try to break these down, but I'm probably going to learn more in the comment section than I am through reading the book, honestly. Alright, so let's go. The book starts with the arrival of Professor Charles Xavier and Magneto at Bar Sinister. Which I'll go ahead and plead my ignorance here. I thought Bar Sinister was a construct of Battle World. Obviously it's not now, but if I was wrong with that comment, you guys just correct me down below because I haven't figured that out yet. Upon their arrival, they're stopped by one of the guards, and this guy is absolutely hilarious. He halts them and he states, hey, state your business, but please just don't ask for any help or handouts, because while we have much, we really can't be bothered with you sad problems and your sad people. And then he just kind of stops. He's like, oh my goodness, you're wearing a cape. How perfect. I guess you probably don't have an appointment, because if you have a cape, you don't need an appointment, right? From there, Professor X says, we need to talk to Nathaniel Essex. The guard removes his helmet, actually showing that he is one of the Mr. Sinister clones, and asks, which one? There are many of us. And at this point, Eric bucks up and says, how about we settle for the one that's in charge? From here, our witty Mr. Sinister clone starts to try to test Magneto and see where that line is, and I'll tell you, when he crosses it is when he starts to insult Professor X and gets thrown through a wall. And while Professor X tries to stop Magneto and says, hey, we need this man, Magneto reminds him, no, Charles, this man needs to decide if he wants to escort us inside or if he wants to continue thusly and suffer the consequences. 2 minutes later, Professor X and Charles Xavier are standing in front of Sinister's throne. And once again, the conversation swings to one thing: Magneto's cape. And when this version of Sinister actually brings up, why don't I have a cape? His advisor says, well, I thought of one, I just never mentioned it. It slipped my mind. This version of Mr. Sinister turns and says, execute this man. And they do. They absolutely hack this guy to pieces for not recommending a cape. And then, like nothing happened, he turns to Magneto and Professor X and says, now, how can I help you? What happens next is a pretty cool conversation, because Magneto and Professor X are talking to Mr. Sinister, and they're letting out all these things that they know about him, saying, look, we know about your ongoing endeavors in genetics. We know about your plan to collect all the world's DNA. And while we know about all that, we're here to strike a deal with you. We want you to deviate your focus. You can keep doing your broad indexing if you want, but we need you to prioritize making a comprehensive database of all mutant DNA, safe, secure, and redundant. We can provide you with samples you might have trouble getting, including our own. But this version of Sinister sits there seemingly unconvinced. Well, I'm sure even a serf would comprehend the point of one collecting is found in the value of one's collection. So explain to me why I would take such a great interest in the mutant gene. And Magneto tells him, look, I've seen the future, and the cause of mutantdom, this cause is yours. And Sinister sticks to this, I've messed around with the mutant gene, this aberrant gene, and it doesn't mix with my superior genetic structure. I won't tolerate such a, and then BLAM! This version of Sinister gets straight shot in the head by another Mr. Sinister, this one being the one that's actually, allegedly, the one with the mutant gene. And he's all for this union. He says he loves the ambition, he loves every bit of it. So what do we do next in our little sinful secret confederacy? Then Professor X tells him, first, you need to begin the good work, and then I need you to forget why you're doing it, and that we were ever here, until the day I tell you to remember. And that finishes our X0, or X-Men Year 1 rundown for the book. From there we jump to the X1 timeline, and we're on the island of Krakoa. And Professor X has brought Cypher, Douglas Ramsey, to the island in order to build and develop further the relationship that Professor X has already managed to kind of established with the island. And Professor X has been able to develop this relation through a telekinetic link with the island. And to do that, Professor X marches Douglas out through the woods and introduces him to Krakoa. And watch Cypher work between the telekinetic link with Professor X and work with the island, working with Krakoa is actually really cool. And I love watching Cypher's mutant ability kick in here. As he asks Professor X, just ask Krakoa how he feels today. And he asks him and he says, the island is sad, Krakoa is sad. And once Cypher realizes that they're communicating on an empathetic level, he's able to kick in his mutant ability, and like that, he is able to just decipher everything. And he says, I may have missed some of it, but here you go. We were Okara, the one land, ancient before the word existed and not yet old in the way that they were old. The twilight sword of the enemy tore the world asunder, and what was one became two, Oroka and Krakoa. And from the chasm between them, from whatever wicked place they came, the enemy poured into the world. If not for the man who was not a man, the first mutant, the warrior god in blue, the world would have fallen. But using all his might and powers, he stood in the gap, pushed Oroka through the chasm, set his four to sentinel that land, and sealed the chasm shut, never to be opened again. It was the thing that had to happen. It was, but Krakoa remains alone, a half, not whole, for now and forever, or something like that. A couple of interesting points here on the island of Krakoa and its origin is, first of all, the Twilight Sword. Last time I remember seeing the Twilight Sword was in the Thanos Win storyline, but anyways, typically the Twilight Sword is a Thor kind of. I'm interested to see how they tie that into an X-Men book, or if this is just them laying some fodder for later to pick up. The next interesting piece is that at the beginning of time, whenever all this happened, it was Apocalypse there that was the one who stopped this invasion of Earth, that prevented the land from being destroyed. Him, along with his original four horsemen, which remember that because I believe that's going to possibly come into play later. Anyways, back to Cypher. He's sitting around just talking about how beautiful it is here when Professor X says, hey, look, I was hoping you would say that. I need a favor from you. We have a plan. And rather than explaining it, Professor X, of course, just shows it to him. And when he does, Cypher agrees to do it. He agrees basically that it's going to take him about possibly a few months or a year, but he's going to build this language that Professor X has asked him to do. But not just the language, it's actually an interface so everyone can interact with the island, is what I'm understanding. And since it's a good transition, this white page actually shows some of the systems and stuff that once Cypher gets done building this program to interface with it, different systems come online, such as Sage running transit and monitoring, Black Tom Cassidy running defense and observation, secondary external systems being run by Trinary, and Overwatch and data analysis being run by Beast. We also get hinted at that there's basically a cave network underneath the laboratory, underneath all of Krakoa, where Forge is down there building biological machines that could possibly be used to manage mutant expansion on the island. All very possibly huge clues to where we're going in the near future. From there we jump to X3, or year 1000. And here we have the Elder and the world mind that has been developed and is trying to ascend with the Phalanx. And this Elder tells the Phalanx, we are ready for conversion, we hope for ascension. And the Phalanx responds, we care little for hope, will you ascend? And the Elder's response is, we have to try, don't we? Isn't that what's next? The idea of your great union existing beyond our reach is something we cannot tolerate. Do it. And the Phalanx reaches out, grabs this orb, which apparently has a copy of the Elder and the Elder's conscious within the orb. So that once the Phalanx has absorbed or ascended this orb, it then is able, the Elders then to discuss with it and say, look, you and I are the only two that know the sequence if this worked. So then the Phalanx spits back the sequence at him, and the Elder just shocked looks, says, so it worked. Even though it worked, though, the question is going to remain is if they are accepted into the Phalanx, and if they will be able to ascend. And at that point, one of the characters makes the comment that absolutely everybody, and well, at least me, definitely what I'm thinking is, I don't understand what just happened. But once again, I'm going to try to explain this to the best of my ability, and I hope it's correct. But I also know if I miss anything, you guys will help me out down in the comments. Alright, so the Phalanx is a collective. It goes out and it tries to discover useful tools in other galaxies that it can incorporate into its giant galactic hive mind. Now at this point, the mutant machine hybrid supremacy, whatever we're calling it, has just basically presented its case to on whether or not it should be accepted into the Phalanx, if it will be useful to the Phalanx. Where this becomes problematic for these human AI mechanical hybrids is that they do not accept biological entities. But what the Elder just did was basically make a computerized, a digital version of himself that he copied over to the other machine that was copied and absorbed into the Phalanx. So what he was confirming earlier is that by copying himself and then that copy being absorbed into the Phalanx, he was verifying that he still existed on the other side in a digital form. What's interesting here is the comment that they said they confirmed that the Elder that was absorbed as a test subject was confirmed to be in there somewhere. I'm confused as to whether that's the knowledge he possessed is in there somewhere or the individuality is within the Phalanx. Because I thought the Phalanx was without individuality. And at this point, Nimrod actually asks, isn't it foreboding that they want us, the machines, and not you? And that's when they respond that, no, we're not trying to trick them. I think we've just found a way around the problem. And to best of my understanding, that problem is being a biological entity. Now they're just waiting to see if the way that they've solved the problem in creating digital copies or versions of themselves, if that's acceptable to the Phalanx. I don't know if that's all correct. I don't know if that's all right, but that's what I got out of this. Like I said at the beginning of this issue, this was a lot more cerebral than it was emotional. I think we're building to something here where we're going into the backstory and we're going to see what exactly it was that Sinister did that made everything fail the way that it did. My buddy Lance over at the Comic Aficionado said it right when he said, when Hickman writes Magneto, he has the power the character truly deserves. And he's right, because, I mean, when Magneto, he's not taking any crap from the guy at the front door when he goes into Bar Sinister. And when he felt like Magneto was wasting his time, he put him through a wall. Magneto's a nearly all-powerful mutant with a god complex. You don't waste his time. I also like seeing Cypher and Krakoa, that interaction, and I'm interested in some of the seeds that were planted here. Pun intended, of course, but talk about like the Twilight Sword, for instance, and how that tied back to Apocalypse and him basically defending the Earth at one point. One of the white pages I wanted to dive into a little bit was what they're calling the Red Diamond. It's basically a gossip column written about Bar Sinister. Now I want to hear what you guys think on some of these things, but I'm going to walk through them real quick, give my thoughts on them, and see where everything lies at the end. Number one is a reference to red shoes, and I don't know what that's talking about. The only thing I can figure is there's like a No Place Like Home. We're going to go with a Wizard of Oz theme here. I don't know. Number two talks about a mutant cut down in his prime, a trend-setting mutant who was cut down in his prime, and makes a reference to human clothes and stampeding across their island full of flowers to the flower that's the fullest. Once again, no clue. Number three talks and hints to the remnants from the House of M and the changes Wanda Maximoff made when she warped all of reality in that storyline. Or more importantly, I guess, it talks about some of the remnants that are left from that event. Number four references a warning that washed ashore. The only thing I can think is that when Jean Grey was rediscovered, possibly. I don't know. Again, just skipping ahead, some interesting ones that are mentioned. It does mention the Logan, Jean, Cyclops, Emma Frost's weird relationships thing going on. It hints at the third Cyclops brother. I'm assuming that's Vulcan, but I think they may want you to assume that's Vulcan. Who knows with what Hickman's doing. It mentions the original 4 Horsemen of Apocalypse, and that if they were to show back up, the people that he's using right now would be cast aside for those dudes. It mentions where Mr. Sinister got his X-Gene and that the person he got it from is more interesting than the story behind it. And then finally, all of this, it kind of points to, are we dealing with the real Sinister? Are Professor X and Magneto dealing with the real Sinister? Or are they dealing with another clone of Sinister? I took a swing at him, guys. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments on those, because some of them are very interesting. I just, right now, recording this video has been absolutely insane. I'm trying to do it. I'm away from home. I'm traveling. I have my family here. I was sitting here trying to record it, and my daughter started throwing up. It's been one thing after another. My phone won't stop ringing. So I apologize if the editing isn't up to par on this one. So despite all those obstacles, if you still enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. I sincerely appreciate it. And if you would, check if you were a subscriber, because for some reason YouTube has been unsubscribing some folks lately. I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to check this out, guys. That's all I got. Real Comic Stacks out.